but it wasn't me. I didn't do it. What do we do when students argue back with us and are dishonest sometimes even in saying it wasn't me? Let's talk about it in today's episode. Well, welcome back to the Teach for the Heart podcast, where we tackle teaching challenges from a biblical perspective. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. Well, I'm here again with Amanda, one of our Teach for the Heart team members and Teach for the Heart Plus mentors. Amanda, thanks for joining us today as we tackle this question.
So happy to be here.
So here's the question that we got. It says, my question is about how to respond when you know a student is being dishonest to you. I teach 7th grade. Occasionally, I directly observe students throwing something or swearing in class or even just talking while I'm teaching. And when I say something to them, they say, it wasn't me or I didn't do it. How do I handle this? Well, Amanda and I were just talking about this question before we hit record because this is a very interesting question because the teacher is asking, what do I do when students are dishonest? But there's actually something else going on here that's causing the dishonesty. So what I want to do as we talk about this is start by addressing what I'm actually seeing and what I think is causing this to happen so often. And then after we talk about that, we'll circle back and kind of tackle the dishonesty part of it. So the first thing that I'm seeing in this is that the students are probably arguing with the teacher. And this is actually like a form of arguing. So, yes, they are being dishonest, saying it's not me, I didn't do it. By the way, we are assuming in this situation that you saw it. So, we're not talking about gray areas. That's not what we're talking about, where you don't know what happens. You saw it, you know what happened, and the student is saying, I didn't do it. So in this case, yes, they're being dishonest, but it's really more like they're arguing. They're trying to weasel their way out of whatever punishment or consequence or whatever's going to happen, or even just the embarrassment of, being called out or whatever's happening. And so when we realize that's what's happening, then really what we need to do in that moment is we need to first of all, recognize we might be being inconsistent. We might not have been consistent enough in our classroom. And so students see that kind of opportunity or weakness where, hey, if I argue back, I might be able to weasel out of this. And they're kind of taking advantage of that. So we need to up our consistency, but we also need to recognize, like, okay, this is really more of an argument. And we need to not fall into arguing with them. It's not as if we need a signed confession from the student saying, yes, I was swearing to follow through with whatever consequence you have for swearing. Okay. If you saw it or you heard it and you know it happened, you don't really need to argue with them. You can have a pocket phrase that you just state calmly, repeat the consequence, and just end the conversation. So, for example, I care about you too much to argue. I heard you swearing, and the consequence for swearing is a lunch detention. So you'll be receiving your slip later today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And just kind of not listen at all to their arguments, right? Just kind of just nope, like I'm not being dissuaded by you saying I didn't do it. And if you don't really give it the time of day, it's going to quickly fall away because they're going to realize I'm not getting anywhere. But if you sit there and let them kind of argue with you and make their case and like you think about it, they're going to keep doing it. Thoughts on that piece of it, Amanda?
Yeah, so this this isn't really some like deep educational thought here, but the way that you respond to those things, because I didn't notice this when we were discussing it, this question before we started recording, but this is a 7th grade teacher, a middle school teacher, and if you respond to an argument or to a lie and you get really emotional and really heated, um, the students find that entertaining. And if this is becoming like a common thing, students know how to get you angry, and they like to see the teacher become emotional and upset to see what they'll do. Whereas younger students, when they start seeing the teacher get upset, it's they start crying. But sometimes with older students, it could just be the thing to see how you're going to react. So if this is happening often in your class, I would say kind of step back, take a little bit, a time of reflection, and maybe see how you have been responding to see if it's something that the students want to see more often. Like I said, not some deep
Yeah, no, but that's absolutely the reality. I mean, I remember my first year teaching when I was so I had kinda let way too much go, and then I was trying to, like, rein it back in, and so I had my warning system, and there were a couple 6th grade boys who would come up every class and be like, "Well, Alex was talking, and, like, why did I get in trouble? I was hardly talking," and, like, they had all and I gave them the time of day. Like, I let them sit there and kind of lecture me on how I was wrong, and I was like, "Well, I did I was trying to, like, I was trying to be explain to them and, like, it was, get them to understand how fair I'm trying to be." And that was I eventually realized this is the wrong approach. I am letting these 6th graders, like, have this whole thing, and eventually I just said, "No, like, I'm not debating this with you. I'm not arguing with you. Like, I'm doing my best." I no, and that's where those pocket phrases are so helpful, right? Yeah, I give warnings when I see them. I'm sorry I missed some of these other ones, but I did see you talking, and so that's why you got a warning. I'll see you tomorrow. Go to class. And so that's I think an aspect here, right? When we are getting emotional, or just sometimes they just like to argue. Like, that age loves to argue.
Mhm.
I could give you examples of my kids who are that age, right? They
Yeah.
just like to argue, and so yeah, feeding into that with our emotion or just letting them argue can make it a perpetual thing.
Let's see how much class time we could get Miss Reed to focus on this issue.
Yeah, exactly. So the more you're consistent, the better. And then the more you use, like I said, those pocket phrases. So here's just another example. That I care about you too much to argue is one I like. So I care about you too much to argue. I give warnings when I see someone talking, and I saw you talking to Joe. This is your third warning. So here's your reflection sheet. Make sure you have it tomorrow. So once again, you're just calmly stating this is what we're doing. It doesn't matter, and you don't even have to really, like, you're not arguing with them. You're just moving on. And I think when we do this, this shows our calm confidence in our God-given authority. We were
Mhm.
actually just talking about this in an earlier episode 381. If you kinda wanna go back, we talked about God-given authority, avoiding power struggles. But I think that is a way to be confident in our authority while being kind and respectful, right? We're not being mean. We're not getting our emotions up and saying something that we're gonna regret. We're just having that calm, authoritative, but not demanding type of personality with them. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation, and they want to let you know that applications are now open for the 2026 Faith and Nation Student Forum. Each fall, the Herzog Foundation hosts an incredible 4-day retreat for outstanding high school seniors from Christian schools and homeschool co-ops. The Faith and Nation Student Forum gives students the opportunity to strengthen their Christian worldview and engage with government leaders. Students can also participate in teen challenges, outdoor adventures, and social events designed to build leadership skills and lasting friendships. The Herzog Foundation covers the cost of the retreat, all except travel, making this an amazing opportunity for your high school seniors. Help them apply. Applications close September 18th. Learn more and apply at herzogfoundation.com. Now, back to our program. So that's kind of our thoughts on that. That's really what's happening, that the teacher didn't even ask, but that's a really big aspect. But the teacher also specifically asked about the dishonesty and that aspect of, like, okay, well, what do you do with the fact that the students are being dishonest for you? And Amanda, I'm really interested in your thoughts on this, because lying is, obviously, we know as Christians, lying is a sin. And
Mhm.
it is something that is wrong, right? But that also is, there's so much nuance to, like, why the student might be doing this, and I do think sometimes it might be wise to just move on and almost ignore that aspect of it, just by not giving it any credence. Like, we both know that's not true. Just moving on. But there are other times where it might make sense to circle back and have a discussion about the lying itself, or to have honesty be something that you're talking about with your class on a regular basis, because that is important, that we tell the truth and that we don't knee jerk into dishonesty. Any thoughts for
Mhm.
teachers on that aspect of it?
Yeah, it definitely takes quick thinking, but you should ask yourself, should this be dealt with right now? Is this in the best interest of the entire class? Because you do have a responsibility to the other 25, 30 students in your class. Or is it worth taking time away from this class right now to address this? Can everybody benefit from this in some way without me just singling out this one person and hindering our relationship to where they're going to continue to lie in the future. But like ultimately, we can't change the fact that they have lied. The lying has been done. They chose to do it, whether it was something they had planned or just a knee jerk reaction to something. I think the important thing now, once the lying has been done, is because we have the authority in our classroom. And we now have the responsibility to train them to do the right thing, but should that be right now? Should it be later? Should it be individually? Should it be whole group? Is this a pattern? Should this we bring in something with the parent to talk with them? Um, and all this can depend on the grade level that you teach, the time of day this is happening, the subjects that you teach. But the more consistent that you are and the more loving that you are, the better results that you're going to see with the lying in the classroom. So, and they may just simply be lying because they don't want to let you down. So, the more that you show love to your students, and now love is just not letting everything happen. Oh, I love you. I don't want to cause any problems. Loving can be you being firm and you holding your ground with some certain rules and expectations. But ultimately, the students want to be loved and they want to know that you care about them. So, I think that is the better approach to go at it rather than, why did you lie? Why did you do this? Like, hey, why did you lie about that? What's going on? Go at it in a loving approach and just using wisdom.
Yes, absolutely. And you're right. This is, we talk about a lot about having a classroom management plan and like planning your responses, but this is something where, oh my goodness, it just lying is not like there's so many different kinds of lies in different situations it is. So it really is something where you can have a few things pre-planned, but you're really going to need to pray for wisdom and just kind of look at each situation a little bit individually. And that's why, and I think in a lot of these cases, at least in this case where the students are just like knee jerk saying, I'm not doing this, or just lying about something that they're already in trouble about, I think it's helpful to recognize, well, now we have two issues. We have the original issue that you're in trouble for, and then the dishonesty. And so that's why, as a general rule, but not like definitely every situation's different. I do think dealing with like kind of ignoring the lying in the moment and just dealing with the issue, like we were talking about before. Like, nope, your denial does not change anything. This is what's happening. Like, just sticking with that. And then it can often, and then if you're like, I need to deal with that lying though, it might be better to circle back around separately to that, right?
Hmm.
Or at least separate them and deal with one and then the other. Because if you mix that in, it just muddies the water on the original issue. So dealing with the original issue, and then you can circle back and even just say something like, before you told me that you weren't talking when I did, I know this is a knee jerk reaction, but the truth is important, and in maybe just having a little bit of a conversation around them. If you're in a Christian school, you can talk about how God values truth, right? If you're not and you can't go into that aspect, though, talking about how honesty is important and we need to be able to trust each other. But I do think separating those two and not trying to
Hmm.
mix them together can be really wise. Amanda, any final advice for teachers as we wrap up this episode?
Yes. So as I was thinking about this, the really quick reaction of, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. I kind of related that to the reaction of whenever somebody says something to us or asks us a question and we'll say what, but then we start answering. It's just like that was our attention getter. And sometimes that can be that attention getter as well, saying it wasn't me. Well, I didn't do it. So maybe just working with your children on how to respond to something like that first initial attention getter response. It could be, like, ma'am, yes, I didn't hear you. But, just some, or just like, huh? Like that's not the best way saying huh. But that's another response where you can then shift your attention rather than just saying, it wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Right, that's a really good point. Some students may only not be fully aware, like, I am telling a lie in this moment. Yeah, it's just kind of
Yeah.
this knee jerk, just reflexive habit they've gotten into that is worth helping them break because it's not right and it's not good, but that's really helpful to keep in mind. I hope you guys found some helpful tidbits in this conversation about this very interesting question. And thank you to the teacher that submitted it. If you have a question you'd like us to answer, go to teachfortheheart.com/teacher talk and you can submit your question. If you want to listen to that episode about avoiding power struggles and how to have authority in the right way, you can go to episode 381 or teachfortheheart.com/381. And if you'd like our free classroom management training, you can get that anytime at teachfortheheart.com/free. Well, this episode has been brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. All views and opinions are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of the Herzog Foundation. Thank you for being with us. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. In the meantime, teacher, remember, God is at work in you and through you, and He's using you to make a difference. Keep your eyes on Him and teach for the heart.